which, due to government advice to practice social distancing, will be held virtually. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that the mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen hand at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I will also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. Officers too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. I will now proceed to agenda business. First item on the agenda is to receive apologies for absence from members and officers, please. Have I any apologies? Jackie, please.
From Claire Marchant, the Corporate Director of Social Services. I'm you representing her today.
And thank you very much. Warm welcome to Jackie, our Head of Adult Social Care. Good to see you. Are there any other apologies, please, from colleagues? If not, then we will now receive any declarations of interest from colleagues in accordance with the members' code of conduct adopted by this authority. Are there any declarations of interest, please? No? In which case then we will move on to receive the first report on today's agenda, and that is a report of the Chief Executive on the Corporate Plan 2018 to 2023, reviewed for 2022 to 2023. Mark, please.
Leader, it'll be Caris, actually. So.
It will be Caris, will it? Okay, so it won't be Mark, it will be Caris. Over to our Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. Caris, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. For the purpose of the recording, I should introduce myself. I'm Caris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. So, as you said, Leader, we're looking now at the corporate plan for the period 2018 to 2023, which has been reviewed for 2022-23. And the revised corporate plan is attached for members at Appendix A. So the corporate plan for the period 2018 to 2023 describes the Council's vision for Bridgend County Borough Council, our 3 wellbeing objectives and our organisation values and principles that underpin how we will work to deliver our priorities. The plan represents our contribution to achieving the 7 national wellbeing goals as set out in the Wellbeing of Future Generations of Wales Act, and our improvement objectives under the performance duties of the Local Government and Election Wales Act 2021. This latter piece of legislation places new performance and governance duties on local authority. Evaluation of performance is now a continuous organisational-wide self-assessment of how effectively a council is operating, not only in terms of meeting wellbeing objectives, but also how it's delivering its functions, using its resources, and governing itself. So each council is now required to undertake an annual review of the extent it is exercising its functions effectively and whether or not it's using its resources efficiently. And a report on the council's performance must be published and distributed widely to Welsh Government, Audit Wales and other regulators. And as part of this review, the council will be required to consult with residents, businesses and council staff about its performance. The plan that you have here in front of you this afternoon is the final one for this 5-year plan. So between October and November 2021, the corporate plan has been refreshed for the coming financial year. And as part of that, it's been discussed with corporate directors and heads of service throughout the authority. This has enabled officers to consider any emerging priorities as part of the COVID-19 recovery and renewal work, to take account of any priorities that have been fed back to us by the external regulator, and to streamline the commitments and performance indicators to ensure a strategic focus on achieving our wellbeing objectives. In addition, the outcome of the Fit for the Future consultation that was undertaken in December last year has helped to shape where efforts should be concentrated going forward. People have placed importance on recycling and waste, highways and infrastructure improvement and community facilities, including parks and outdoor spaces. Priority areas also identified included support for older people, tackling food poverty and homelessness. Also, further efficiencies to be identified, including continuing to streamline our processes and to encourage our citizens to take more responsibility for themselves. The wellbeing objectives, aims and strategic priorities within the plan remain unchanged. However, some commitments have been revised and performance indicators to measure outcomes have been agreed. Targets have been set for 2022-23 where possible, although it should be noted that the ongoing pandemic continues to impact on the availability of data to set some meaningful targets. The draft corporate plan was considered by the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee in January this year. So the document in front of you today replaces the current corporate plan, and progress against the plan will be monitored through the corporate performance assessment process. Performance challenge will also take place at Directorate Management Team meetings and twice yearly at the Corporate and Overview and Scrutiny Committee. In addition, in accordance with the performance duty of the Local Government and Elections Act, the Governance and Audit Committee now has a role in the assessment of performance and governance, which includes, among other areas, assessment performance of our wellbeing objectives as set out in this corporate plan. I would therefore lead to take members to the recommendations at point 9 of this report.
Thank you very much for that, Carys. Are there any questions for Carys on the report, please? Question from me, Carys, is about that contribution, that welcome contribution that we always have from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee members, and this is from corporate resources, Overview and Scrutiny. Can you explain how we've reflected their thinking and any comments in the plan? Because I know we've certainly considered the input that they offered in terms of the draft corporate plan.
Well, as mentioned, Leader, the performance does go through that committee biannually, so they have a detailed look at the targets and our progress against those. And certainly their comments around that have been included now in the revised targets going forward, so that the targets now are trying to be more strategic, so that as we bring our performance back to members, they look at the strategic issues and how they're affecting Bridgend, and that's certainly been influenced by the comments that we've had back through the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee during the year. As I mentioned, it was taken to them in January of this year, and they agreed and approved the plan and didn't make any changes to it as a result of that review in January.
Okay, thank you for that, Carys. Councillor Patel, I can see you want to come in, and a warm welcome to Councillor Patel. I know you've experienced some technical difficulties, but you're here now. And I should add, because I wasn't sure which stage you were able to join us, have you got any declarations of interest?
I don't have any declarations of interest. Thank you very much.
The only thing you should declare, and you're not going to declare it, so I will, is that it's your birthday today. So a very happy birthday, Penblwydd Hapus, Councillor Patel. So over to you.
Thanks, thanks, Leader. And yes, as you can see, I'm very dedicated to the day job. I've decided to join cabinet committee, like cabinet meeting, budget cabinet on my birthday as well. But if I had an ordinary job, I probably would have taken the day off.
Here, Leader. I second the recommendation that we say happy birthday to Denisha.
Please don't sing.
No, he's not going to sing. Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Patel, please.
Yes, in all seriousness, I really enjoyed reading this iteration of the corporate plan, and I think it's come along quite a lot since we first used to put these in place, and I think it was quite long and it wasn't engaging, and I think we've got the right balance in this document, in my opinion. I just wanted to draw members of the public's attention to page 25, which shows the income that we receive, and I just wanted to highlight that the council tax that people pay only contributes 19% of what we run off as a borough, and I know I often get asked, and I've always tried to look for this pie diagram and I can't find it when I'm trying to respond, but I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's often a misconception that council tax pays for everything, and it doesn't. You know, we run into the millions, and council tax only contributes 19% of the budget, and I think just going on then, I would just say that there's interest in pie diagrams after that to show where the money is spent as well, which are really easy to follow in my opinion. So just wanted to flag that.
Thank you for flagging that, Councillor Patel. It is a fact that many residents are simply not aware of, but it is an important fact about our finances. Councillor Baldwin, please.
Thank you, Leader. It's in a very similar strain to what Councillor Patel has just said, because on the very next page, I just wanted to highlight in relation to our council tax income in relation to just our schools expenditure. And you can see from that pie chart there that we spend 28% of our budget on schools. So we actually spend more on schools than what we collected all of our council tax. So if people are wondering where it goes, it doesn't even cover our schools. So it's really important that I think that our residents understand where that spend is going, because we want to try and make sure that that council tax income is spread across the services that we are providing, but in reality, it doesn't even cover our schools budget. Thank you, Leader.
Another important fact that is important that residents understand. My other question then, Carys, is just around the work I know we do with partners on the plan. and ensuring that it's cited at a public service board level, because so many of the objectives are objectives and outcomes that we can only achieve in partnership with other agencies. So in particular, for example, keeping people safe, that would be with South Wales Police. Keeping people healthy, that would be with Cwm Taf Morgannwg University Health Board. Delivering better education outcomes, that would be with the college and with our schools. I know that's a thread that's important throughout the corporate plan, and wherever it does require partnership working, and that is the case for most of our objectives and outcomes actually, then that is underpinned by close and strong partnership working. And I'm sure you can confirm, Carys, that that is the case for our key actions and outcomes in the report.
Absolutely, Leader. As you said, a lot of the actions in there indicate that whilst the council has a significant part to play in the what we want to achieve, that we can only achieve that working with our partners. And you'll be aware that we do that at a number of different levels, both operationally and strategically. So yes, the partnership working at the sort of PSB and RPB levels are extremely important to enable the council to deliver on the corporate plan. And I think it's rightly reflected in that report this afternoon.
Thank you for that, Carys. And I should have confirmed when I welcomed Councillor Patel that Councillor Patel had, of course, arrived before the start of the report on the plan. So Councillor Patel can, of course, take part in the.
Yes, I did, Leader. I arrived before Carys started speaking.
You did. Okay, thank you, Councillor Patel. So can I have a mover for the recommendations then, please, colleagues?
Move to recommendation.
I'll happily second them, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. And is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please?
Agreed.
And of course, as is the case every year, this will be recommended to Council for approval tomorrow. And I should have checked, Carys, has any, and with the Chief Executive, have any members raised any issues or queries around the corporate plan, as we're obviously due to consider that tomorrow?
Leader, not from my point of view. I've not received anything directly on it at this stage.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, Mark. Next item, next report on the agenda for today's meeting is the medium-term financial strategy 2022 to 2023, 2025 to 2026. I'll ask our Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change to present this report, please, Carys.
Okay, thank you very much, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to present to Cabinet this afternoon the medium-term financial strategy for the period 2022-23 to 2025-26. This includes a financial forecast for that period, a detailed revenue budget for the coming financial year, a capital programme for the period 2021-22 to 2031-32, and finally the corporate risk assessment. The medium-term financial strategy is fully aligned with the Council's corporate plan, which you've just discussed now earlier on this agenda, and the wellbeing objectives contained within it. The development of the medium-term financial strategy has been guided by these priorities. And although reductions in the level of funding available in previous years has necessitated significant budget reductions across various service areas, the Council continues to manage annual gross expenditure of around 459 million and is the largest employer in the county borough. As a result, the Council does play a significant role in the local economy of this area. The medium-term financial strategy articulates how the Council plans to use its resources to support the achievements of its wellbeing objectives and statutory duties, including the management of financial pressures and risks over the coming 4 years. The document outlines the principles and detailed assumptions which drive the Council's budgets and spending decisions. It outlines the financial context within which the Council is operating and tries to mitigate any financial risks and pressures going forward, whilst at the same time taking advantage of any opportunities arising. The medium-term financial strategy focuses on how the Council intends to respond to the increasing pressures on public sector services, which have undoubtedly been exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic. The quarterly reports to Cabinet during this financial year on the projected revenue position for 21-22 have outlined in detail the impact on the budget of the additional cost pressures and loss of income faced by the Council throughout the year as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Welsh Government has played a significant role in mitigating a large proportion of these losses through their various funding streams, most notably the COVID-19 Hardship Fund. The Council now needs to consider the longer-term impact of the pandemic and how it will shape the Council as part of its recovery programme, given that the Hardship Fund is due to come to an end now at the end of March this year. The announcement of the final local government settlement for 22-23 is again approximately 2 months later than in previous years, due to the outcome of the comprehensive spending review by the UK government not being delivered until the end of October 2021. The final settlement for local government in Wales is not due to be announced until the 1st of March. As a result, this budget is being proposed on the basis of the provisional settlement received in December 2021. Whilst we do not anticipate any significant change in funding between the provisional and final settlements, any changes will be reported back to Council at a later date. It is not envisaged that any changes will impact upon the Council tax. As the Council's Section 151 officer, I am required to report annually on the robustness of the level of reserves, and I can confirm that I believe the level of Council reserves is sufficient to protect the Council in light of unknown demands or emergencies and current funding levels. I'm also required to report if I do not believe that there is sufficient resource to discharge my role as required by Section 114 of the Local Government Act 1988. Members should note that there is sufficient resource to discharge this role within the budget proposed. In finalising the strategy and the budget for the coming year, estimates have been made which take into account circumstances and events which exist or are reasonably foreseeable at the time of preparing the budget. The budget has been prepared following consultation with elected members, the School Budget Forum and service managers. And subject to the risks identified within the medium-term financial strategy, provides a basis for managing the Council's resources for the financial year 22-23 and beyond. If I may, Leader, I would like now to take you to Annex 3, which is the detailed medium-term financial strategy, in order to draw members' attention to some of the key information within that document. Section 1 of the strategy includes a financial overview, and members will be more than aware that the Council has had to make budget reductions in previous years, and Chart 1 indicates budget reductions of £62 million having been found over the last 10 years. This represents almost 21% of the Council's net budget in the current year. The council receives the majority of its funding from Welsh Government through the Revenue Support Grant and a share of the non-domestic rates. And this is then supplemented through council tax collection, other grants and fees and charges. Council tax will account for 27% of the income received by the council in the coming financial year. It should be noted that the amount that council taxpayers are required to pay is made up of three elements: a charge from this council, a charge from town and community councils, and then a charge from the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales. Budget planning for 2022-23 is more uncertain than usual due to the impact of the pandemic, which is on top of the ongoing uncertainties and financial pressures arising from the UK's withdrawal from the European Union. And whilst the Welsh Government has been supportive of the additional costs and burdens that have emerged from COVID and have covered most of the directly incurred costs, we are aware that this funding is not going to be available going forward. In particular, it is anticipated that some of the impact on levels of income may be a medium-term problem. It is also likely that there will be an additional call on the council tax reduction scheme in view of the economic impact of the pandemic, and the level of council tax collection is estimated to be lower than pre-pandemic levels. In addition, ongoing expenditure on matters relating to public health, as well as other expectations with regard to addressing homelessness more robustly, supporting social care, which is experiencing increased costs, need and demand for services, are all likely to be significant. In section 2 of the strategy, further context is provided, which deals with both financial and non-financial information, which has shaped the financial position for the council. It should be noted that there are some significant underlying budget pressures in some service areas that were reported in 2021 and still persist in the current financial year. The main financial pressures are in relation to home to school transport, social services and wellbeing, homelessness and waste services. As in previous years, work has been done to secure greater involvement of stakeholders in the development of this strategy and the corporate plan, which you've already discussed. And this work has included an 8-week consultation with residents of Bridgend, which was undertaken between the 20th of September and the 14th of November last year. The emphasis of this was on what the public felt worked well during the pandemic, and where the council needs to continue to make changes or improvements to ensure that it is able to deliver sustainable and effective services for the next 5 to 10 years. The outcome of this consultation process was reported to Cabinet in December 2021 and is detailed in Table 5 of the Medium-Term Financial Strategy. Work has also been undertaken with the Budget Research and Evaluation Panel over the last 6 months to facilitate the budget planning process. The draft budget report, approved by Cabinet in January this year, has subsequently been scrutinised by the Council Scrutiny Committees, resulting in a report to Cabinet on the 8th of February from the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, outlining a number of recommendations. The recommendations, which include recommendations from the Budget Research and Evaluation Panel, and a response to these, is provided in Appendix A to the Medium-Term Financial Strategy. Work has been done to reflect on the responses received from the public consultation and from discussions with and recommendations from the Budget Research and Evaluation Panel and Scrutiny Committees, and has been used to compile the budget based on these responses. So this has included protecting school budgets, providing support for waste and recycling services, additional funding to support an ageing population, continuing to provide support for homeless individuals, continuing to invest in our digital capabilities, and continuing to invest in our highways and infrastructure. A freeze in council tax in the coming year to support residents to meet the significant rise in the cost of living is therefore proposed. Details of the budgets for the individual services are shown in section 2.4 of the strategy. In section 3 of the strategy, the current financial situation is outlined for members, and I'd just like to raise a couple of key points in relation to that. The late announcement of the provisional local government settlement, the medium-term financial strategy in front of you today and the budget for the coming year is based on that provisional settlement. With regards to that settlement, the headline figure was an overall increase of 9.4% across Wales. For Bridgend, there was an increase of 9.2% in our funding from Welsh Government for the coming financial year. This was significantly in excess of the anticipated settlement, and the increase for Bridgend was the 13th highest increase across all local authorities, and this is illustrated for members at chart 3 in the medium-term financial strategy. Whilst this is a significant increase, members are asked to note that within this funding, the authority is required to fund a number of things, which includes the costs arising from the teachers' pay deals for the current financial year and the coming financial year. Increased costs arising from the UK government's announcement to increase national insurance contributions for employers to fund a health and social care levy, and also the additional costs of introducing the real living wage for care workers. A significant change for the coming financial year, as I've already said, is that the hardship grant, which has supported us through the pandemic, will no longer be available. Therefore, the authority is expected to meet any additional costs resulting from the pandemic during the new financial year from within its own budgets. The MTFS also models the financial position for the authority for the next 4 years based on the latest information available. For the first time in a number of years, Welsh Government has provided a provisional settlement for the coming financial year, and then some indicative increases for the following 2 financial years. Using this information, it is possible to look forward at different scenarios for the resources that may be available going forward. The medium-term financial strategy is regularly reviewed as more information becomes available. This is particularly important currently, given the uncertainties around Brexit and the fallout from the pandemic in the coming months and years. The financial forecast for the period 2022 to 2026 is predicated on assumptions regarding demographic projections, inflationary uplift, the impact of new legislation and policies, and increase in staffing costs. And in developing these estimates, the strategy contains assumption with regards to possible council tax increases going forward. Due to the significantly better than anticipated settlement for the coming financial year, it is proposed to freeze the level of council tax for 2022-2023 to support the citizens of Bridgend to deal with the rising cost of living, such as increased energy and food bills, other inflationary increases, mortgage interest rises, and national insurance increases. For planning purposes, it has been assumed that the council tax will increase by 4.5% in 2023-24 and 24-25. It must be stressed that these figures are for planning purposes only and will be reviewed each time the medium-term financial strategy is updated. Together with the indicative funding from Welsh Government, it's estimated that there will be a net budget requirement of £21 million to be met over this period, and the scenarios for the future planning are detailed for members at Table 7 within the medium-term financial strategy. The Council's corporate risk assessment identifies the key corporate risks and mitigating actions and is included within your papers today. The risk assessment is reviewed regularly throughout the financial year and is scrutinised by Governance and Audit Committee. These risks have been taken into account in the preparation of this document, and where there are identifiable financial risks, these have been provided for either within the budget or within earmarked reserves. Section 4 of the plan outlines in more detail for you the budget position for the coming financial year. And the net budget requirement for next year is a net budget of 319 million. And in summary, the key points to note with regard to next year are that the budget proposals that we fund financial pressures of 20.6 million, and these include £6 million to meet pay and price inflation, £2.1 million to fund the increases in NI contributions, and £12.5 million for inescapable service cost pressures, and these include the cost of implementing the Additional Learning Needs Act for 2018, the recurrent increased costs of home to school transport, the detail of which is provided within the report, increases in the older people's population, increase in costs in the supported living scheme as a result of a recent tender exercise, increased workforce pressures within children's social services, and increased costs of commissioned services in the social care sector following the increase in the national living wage announced by the UK government, and also the increased costs of waste collection. So these are now funded within the budget in front of you this afternoon. There have been 2 new additions to the proposed cost pressures since the draft strategy was considered by Cabinet and scrutiny committees, and these are detailed for you within the report at paragraph 4.1.14. They relate to funding for youth services and also some additional money to help us to meet inevitably additional pressures which will arise during the year or unanticipated events. And members can find further details regarding those cost pressures in Appendix C of the MTFS. Due to the better than anticipated settlement, it has been possible to reduce the proposed budget reductions for next year, although proposals totaling 631,000 have been identified. These are detailed for you in Appendix D of the medium-term financial strategy, and these have not been changed since the draft strategy was reported to Cabinet in January this year. The Council does raise income via fees and charges, and these are reviewed on an annual basis. A schedule of fees and charges for the coming financial year will be published on the Council's website in accordance with our fees and charges policy that Cabinet approved in October 2021. New charges or charges that have been included in the budget and are above the general increase are shown for you today in Appendix E. As well as the revenue budget, the medium-term financial strategy also deals with the proposed capital programme for the period 2021-22 to 2031-32. And this 10-year programme has been revised during this financial year to bring it up to date and to take account of any new capital schemes as they have been developed. Within the Welsh Government provisional settlement for the coming financial year, £6.6 million is being made available to support capital spend. And as with the revenue settlement, indicative figures have been received for the following 2 years, but these have only been provided on an all Wales basis to date. Due to the limited capital finances available, services have not been asked to submit bids for funding at this stage, although it is recognised that there are a number of capital pressures that will need financing going forward, including economic recovery, decarbonisation and homelessness. In addition, financial pressures arising as a result of the impact of the pandemic and Brexit, which were reported to Council earlier this month, will be monitored to ensure that the schemes already agreed can be fully funded to ensure their completion. The capital programme contains a number of annual allocations that are met from the total general capital funding for the Council, and the proposed allocation of this for 2022-23 is shown in Table 14 of the medium-term financial strategy. The latest capital programme was approved by Council on the 9th of February. Within today's budget report, it is proposed to include an additional sum of £2 million in the capital programme for the coming year to enable the authority to continue to invest in and proactively maintain our highways infrastructure. On the 7th of February, the Council was informed by Welsh Government of an additional general grant of £3.1 million for the current financial year, and this funding can be used to support the effective management of our capital programme. In line with the grant letter, it is proposed that this funding is slipped to next year and allocated accordingly. This enables a proper review of all possible new schemes to be undertaken to ensure members can be assured of the purpose of the scheme, the full cost of the scheme, any risks associated with the proposal, and the likely timeline for completion of the scheme before its inclusion in the capital programme. Any further new proposals for capital funding will be considered in light of and in line with the proposed capital strategy for the period to 2031-2032 and will be brought back to Council for approval at a later date. The revised capital programme leader is outlined in Appendix H of today's report. I've already referred to reserves, and more details on the reserves is given in section 4.3 of the medium-term financial strategy. At the end of March 2021, the council fund stood at £9.7 million, which is 5.01% of the net budget for the current year, excluding school delegated budgets. In the face of continued uncertainty regarding the economy and public finances, I would recommend that the council maintains its council fund balance at a minimal level of 5% of the council's net budget. This will be monitored and will depend upon financial performance during future periods on the need to cover against specific risks as they arise through that process. An overview of the Council's reserve was undertaken at the end of September and at the end of December 2021 in accordance with the Council's Reserves and Balances Protocol, and a further review will be undertaken at the end of the current financial year, and transfers will be made at this point, taking account of the overall financial position of the Council, including the final outturn position and any new pressures or risks that may need to be provided for. With regards to the council tax, the proposed budget of £319.5 million shown in Table 10 of the strategy can be balanced with no increase in the council tax for the coming financial year. This takes into account, as I've already said, the better than anticipated settlement and aligns with the response from the budget consultation, whereby 54% of respondents stated that they wish to keep the council tax at the same level. It should be stressed that this is proposed as a one-off basis for the coming financial year to support the citizens of Bridgend in dealing with the current rising cost of living. The final section of the medium-term financial strategy provides information on the Council's longer-term financial outlook. This is not intended to be a 10-year budget strategy due to the number of variables that impact on our financial position. However, it does provide a financial framework to reference against when preparing both annual and longer-term financial plans. The value of this longer-term framework is that it enables us to understand the broad direction of financial travel that the Council is currently on and the impact that current decision-making will have on the long-term financial health of the Council. Within this section, consideration is given to a number of different areas, including future sources of funding, future cost pressures on the Council, and a strategy to meet those challenges. So if I may, Leader, I'd just now like to refer members to the recommendations at section 9 in the covering report.
Thank you for that very comprehensive report, Carys. That was comprehensive, but still a concise summary of the medium-term financial strategy, because it is a mammoth document and set of a suite of documents and figures and tables and analysis and proposals. I see the Deputy Leader wants to come in, so I'll bring him in first, and then Councillor Gebbie. Deputy Leader, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and yes, thank you, Carys, for that comprehensive introduction to the report. Agreeing the mid-term financial strategy and setting a balanced budget is one of, if not the most important roles of an elected member, because without sufficient resource, we will be unable to function as authority. So I would like to first, I suppose, acknowledge the contributors to this report. That is the Budget Research and Evaluation Panel. They began their deliberations back in July. They were given the budget book and the final statement of accounts, and so they had all the materials necessary to scrutinise previous budget and enable them to make constructive contributions to the setting of the budget this year, and I certainly welcome the recommendations that they put forward, and you will see our responses to those recommendations within the report. And then also the scrutiny process, they've had an opportunity to scrutinise the draft budget, and we made ourselves available for questions and interrogation. It felt at times, and but I certainly welcome that robust challenge and our responses to their recommendations that can also be found in the report. And I'd also like to thank the general public, because it's a statutory responsibility to go out to consult with the general public. And I certainly welcome that interaction and that opportunity for them to help shape the finances of the authority. To shape the budget, that will enable us then to deliver services to the residents and visitors and the many people who choose to work in the county borough. We have over 4,000 businesses and organisations which make a massive contribution to the local economy and to the wider economy throughout the Cardiff City region. And of course, the challenge in setting the budget is to ensure that we have sufficient resource to deliver those services and keep people safe, and to be fair to the council taxpayer, to help residents manage what is undoubtedly going to be a very difficult period. There is a cost of living crisis. We know we have inflation creeping up month on month. We have energy bills escalating, and so to do our bit, I suppose, to help cushion that cost of living crisis, we thought it is important that we recommend a freeze on council tax payments for this year. And that was, of course, was only made possible by the generous settlement that we received from Welsh Government. And so I'm happy to move the recommendation in the report, and I hope members will second that. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader. Next, I've got Councillor Gebbie, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. I won't repeat anything that the Deputy has just said. Suffice to say, I think our actual, I really think that Cerys, I don't know who Cerys is. I'm really sorry, Cerys. I think Cerys and Deborah and the whole team need to be commended for the amount of work that they've done on this. I'm very happy to second this proposal because the reality is we've had a whole year to challenge all of these documents, and any questions that I've had previously have always been succinctly answered. But thank you very much, Cerys.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gebbie. And then Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to thank the officers. I'd like to thank the public for participating in the consultation. I'd like to thank colleague councillors who've taken part in scrutinies and in BREP and other council deliberations. And I'd like to, without predetermining how we vote later on and how we vote tomorrow, I'd like to thank Cabinet colleagues for supporting an annual increase in the funding for all our schools, for continued provision of nursery education above and beyond the statutory provision, something I think we can realistically claim is the most complete nursery education amongst 22 authorities in Wales. Continued capital investment in school buildings, in particular 4 new 21st century primary schools now in planning and consultation periods, and also major regeneration projects in each of our 4 town centres. I think this is a very commendable budget.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. I think it's important that we recognise the proposals for budget growth, because there are areas where we've considered very carefully the business case for and the reasons for those proposals, and they have been taken to the overview and scrutiny committees. They've been taken to the budget research and evaluation panels meetings, and I wanted to check with the Chief Finance Officer for Performance and Change if any of the proposed budget growths have been challenged by members, and I also wanted to ask as well, obviously there was a deadline for any alternative, and that alternative budget needed to be submitted to the proper officers by the end of last week. Can the Chief Finance Officer for Performance and Change advise if we have received, if officers have received any such alternative budget, please?
Thank you, Leader. On your first question with regards to the pressures, as you know, they were all discussed by the scrutiny committees during January after the draft proposal had come to Cabinet. There were questions asked with regards to really seeking additional information so that people understood what those cost pressures were, but they weren't challenged. And in relation to have I received anything by way of challenge to the report, as you said, that was due with me, if it was going to be made by Friday last week, no, I've had no challenge on the report as it stands.
So nothing on the reserves, nothing on the proposed budget reductions, and nothing on the capital programme or treasury management programme, Caris?
No, nothing.
Alternatives, so no alternatives.
No alternatives at all.
From no members?
No.
No, okay, that was the timeline. Deadline was last week. And can you just confirm for members benefit, because I know we've obviously got new members, and I know that the process will be new to them, and I'm particularly pleased to see 2 of our newest members here today, Councillor Davison and Councillor Hughes, and I don't think they've yet had to go through a budget process from start to finish, but I'm sure you can remind other colleagues and explain to those new members the legal duty that we have as elected members, wherever you sit in the chamber, to set a balanced budget, a fully costed, published, balanced budget. Can you confirm that, and the rationale for that, and the legislative context for that duty that we all have as members? Thanks, Caris.
Yes, certainly, Leader. As you say, the council has a legal duty to set a balanced budget, which means that the council must be able to fund all of the expenditure that it makes next year. And as I outlined, it's funded in a number of different ways, both from the funding we get from Welsh Government, from any income that we raise by way of fees and charges, but obviously importantly then from the council tax. And on the basis of the budget in front of you today, the council tax would meet 27% of our net budget for next year. So it is a requirement on councillors. It's what I would say one of the key decisions they make at this time of year is to set that balanced budget, which enables the council to run next year. And in accordance with the legal requirements, that budget has to be set by the 11th of March in the year preceding the budget that you're talking about. So for us, we would have to agree the budget and obviously the council tax by the 11th of March this year for the coming financial year.
Thank you, Carys, and obviously in the interest of transparency and due process, those proposals need to be published as well, don't they? They need to be published. There needs to be notice given so that everyone can see those proposals, just as the fully costed medium-term financial strategy that you have presented us today as the professional officer has, just as that has been published, and indeed this is one of a number of iterations, because the process started a long time ago, and there's opportunities along that process for people to help shape that strategy, but it is the final strategy as a result of the contribution of all members that we are considering today. And then can you also just confirm as well, Carys, because certainly since we last met, Welsh Government have announced additional support for council taxpayers, but that funding is obviously ring-fenced.
Yeah.
And we will obviously provide that support to citizens. It is very much welcomed, I'm sure, by all members, that additional support for council taxpayers, particularly the additional support for people in bands A to D, but also other people who are in receipt of the council tax reduction scheme. But that is ring-fenced, and we will only be able to offer that to people in accordance with the conditions set down by Welsh Government. So whilst it is additional money, it is not available for us to spend, and neither would I think anyone would want to spend it any differently. But that is a new initiative that has been launched since we've obviously started the budget setting process. And perhaps what we can do is we'll continue to communicate with people about that payment, just as we have around, again, the winter fuel support payment, because again, obviously we've checked this with you via email, but if you could confirm that, again, the winter fuel support payment that Welsh Government has made available is money that is ring-fenced for that purpose, can only be used for that purpose, supporting people with their winter fuel payments, and it is effectively a means tested payment, but the money can't be spent in any other way.
Yeah, just to confirm, Leader, as you said, actually, it must be only within the last fortnight we've had the announcement that additional funding will be made available to people to support them because of the particular economic climate we're in at the current time. So as you say, new money is being made available to help people with cost of living. It's not available to everybody. It depends on eligibility, as you rightly said. And the details of that are still being mapped out, but it is ring fenced. It's not available to the council to spend on anything else. It will come through for that particular purpose. And also with regard to the winter fuel arrangements, they've recently been extended and increased. Actually, the level of payment to individuals has been increased, and we are busy making those payments now. But as you rightly said, that money is ring fenced just in relation to the winter fuel payments, and there are certain eligibility criteria that people need to hit in order to get those payments, so that it's not money that's coming to the council for anything other than that purpose.
Thank you for confirming that, Caris. That's certainly important for any members of the public listening in to understand, and again for the benefit of those new members, because it is an incredibly complex and complicated area, local government finance, and it's always a learning curve. But sometimes it seems that to many people that we actually have more choices and options than we often do, because so much of the money, and it's very much welcomed, the additional funding from Welsh Government, but so much of it is earmarked and identified for specific initiatives that Welsh Government support, and we cannot spend that money in a different way. We either spend it on that purpose or we don't spend it at all, and that's often prescribed by Welsh Government. I also wanted to make the point in a similar vein, actually, around some of that significant extra funding we're committing, in particular to social services. I know it's something that Councillor Gebbie has spoken to previously, and it's something that we have long made the case for, and that is paying at least the real living wage to all our care workers. And again, a significant amount of extra funding is being committed in the budget to this, over £2.5 million. Welsh Government have made this their commitment as well, and so they do expect us to pay it. But we were ahead of that. We were already in the process of making those payments and increasing that pay for care workers who undertake an invaluable role in our communities. But one of the biggest areas of growth will be providing funding for that increase in pay for many of our care workers, and of course most of those care workers are in the independent sector. They're not employed directly by the local authority. And also, one of the biggest areas of growth is an additional 1.2 million a year for children's social services, safeguarding and foster care. And again, I'm sure all members would support that proposal. And that was the indication in the meetings and the budget research and evaluation panels. There's a recognition of the extra demand, record level of demand on social services, and so this budget provides that additional resource so we can recruit more workers and provide additional support to people. I can't see that anyone else wants to come. Councillor Gebbie. Councillor Gebbie, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And I don't want to repeat anything that you've just said in relation to the real living wage and care workers. I think the one comment I would make is that we already know from evidence presented to us that we've got not only an increased demand currently, but we have an expectation that the demand on social care provision, our mental health service provision, is going to increase significantly over the coming years, particularly with our young children. We acknowledge that the pandemic has caused them significant damage. We would consider it, if we're looking at it, as an adverse childhood experience, sitting at home through the pandemic. So I think we need to be really clear on our budget headings about where we're spending our money and how we're supporting our residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a very important point, Councillor Gebbie, and once again I would emphasise that there's additional funding in the budget, over 147,000 for extra support for people experiencing mental health problems. And of course, this is an area where there's a joint responsibility, and the lead agency for many of the services is, of course, the local health board, but we work in close partnership with the health board, and we recognise that growing demand for additional support, for, not just for adults, but for children as well. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, we'll now move on to the Treasury Management and Capital Strategy for 2022-2023 and onwards. And again, I'll ask the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change to present this report. Carys, please.
Okay, thank you, Leader. I promise this is the last item I'm bringing to you this afternoon. So the purpose of this report is to present to Cabinet the Treasury Management Strategy 2022-23, which is attached to Appendix A, which includes the Treasury Management Indicators and also the Capital Strategy for 22-23 through to 2031-32, which includes the prudential indicators and the annual minimum revenue provision statement for next year before submitting this forward to Council for approval. Both Treasury Management and the control of capital expenditure are regulated by legislation, and the legislation provides local authorities with the powers to borrow and invest, as well as providing controls and limits on this activity. The Prudential Code for Capital Finance in local authorities includes a requirement for the Council to approve a Treasury Management Strategy before the start of each financial year, which sets out the Council's responsibilities, the delegations in place and the reporting arrangements. And the proposed strategy for the coming financial year is attached at Appendix A to the report. In addition, local authorities are required to determine a capital strategy, which demonstrates that the authority takes capital expenditure and investment decisions in line with service objectives and properly takes account of stewardship, value for money, prudence, sustainability and affordability when making these decisions. And the proposed capital strategy for 2022-2023 to 2031-2032 is attached at Appendix B of this report. If I may, I'll just briefly summarise for members what's in each of these two documents. So the Treasury Management Strategy is attached, as I said. The ongoing impact on the UK of the pandemic, together with higher inflation, higher interest rates following the Bank of England's increase in interest rates in December 21, and then again more recently in February this year, and the impact of the UK leaving Europe, will both be major influences on the Council's Treasury Management Strategy for the coming year. As at the end of December 2021, the Council held £96.8 million of borrowing and had made investments to the value of £77.5 million. And the detail on the external debt and the investment position is shown for you in Table 1 of the Treasury Management Strategy. The Treasury Management Strategy highlights that the Council will have a new borrowing need over the coming 3 years to fund the proposed capital programme that we've just discussed. With short-term interest rates currently much lower than longer-term rates, it is likely to be more cost-effective in the short term to use internal resources to fund our expenditure. The strategy is clear that we will take the most appropriate form of borrowing, depending on the prevailing interest rates at the time. The borrowing need will be monitored on an ongoing basis, and any new borrowing will be considered alongside any changes in the capital programme that may affect the level of borrowing required. Any significant changes within the proposals here today will be reported to Cabinet, to Governance and Audit Committee and to Council as appropriate. In November 2020, Her Majesty's Treasury issued revised lending terms for Public Works Loan Board borrowing by local authorities. and the PWLB would be our major source of borrowing. Under these new requirements, I would be required to confirm that the capital expenditure plans do not include an intention by the authority to borrow to invest primarily for financial return, and I can confirm that the council does not intend to invest in that way. As outlined above, at the end of December last year, the council had investments valued at £77.5 million, and our main objective when investing money is to strike an appropriate balance between risk and return, to minimise the risk of incurring losses from defaults and the risk of receiving unsuitably low investment income. The council may invest its surplus funds with approved counterparties, and these are detailed for you at table 6 of the Treasury Management Strategy. And then, in accordance with the codes of practice that we adhere to, Council will receive this investment strategy now, but you will also have a mid-year monitoring report and an annual Treasury outturn report, so that the function is fully monitored by yourselves and by Council. At Appendix B to today's report is the capital strategy for the period 22-23 to 2031-32. The strategy gives you a high-level overview of how capital expenditure, capital financing and treasury management activity contributes to the provision of services. This document is presented as an integral part of the Council's budget and policy framework. It links, therefore, with the corporate plan, the Treasury Management Strategy, the Medium-Term Financial Strategy and the Council's Asset Management Plan. The strategy details how any proposed investments in land and buildings will require the completion of a full feasibility study to evaluate the practicality of the capital project and to assess its deliverability before the council invests time and money into that project. The strategy notes that there are a number of significant areas that will need financing going forward, and this would include economic recovery, decarbonisation and homelessness. And as was reported to Council earlier this month, there are also other financial pressures arising as a result of both pandemic and Brexit, which are being seen in existing tender prices, and it is anticipated that this will continue for some time going forward. The pressures also include supply chain difficulties leading to higher prices and delays in schemes being completed. The capital strategy also refers to the changes with regards to the ability to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board. Whilst it doesn't preclude the council from investing in commercial activities, investing in assets solely for yield would prevent the council from accessing the Public Works Loan Board monies. As the council will need to borrow to support the 21st Century Schools Band B programme and the wider capital programme, this would prevent the council investing in land or property purely to achieve a financial return, as we need to use our borrowing capability to fund those important schemes going forward. In section 3 of the strategy, details are contained which outline the robust process in place to approve, manage and monitor capital projects. And as members are aware, quarterly capital monitoring reports are prepared for both Cabinet and Council, which include any details of variances between projects, as well as projections of likely year-end spend. The proposed capital investment programme for the period to 2031-32 is detailed at Table 2 in Section 4 of the Capital Strategy. And this details how the programme will be funded, which includes the use of general capital funding provided by Welsh Government, the use of capital receipts and borrowing. Finally, each year the Council must set aside a provision for repaying external debt, and this is known as the minimal revenue provision. The MRP needs to be approved by Council before the start of each financial year, and the policy statement with regards to this can be seen in section 7 of the capital strategy. If I could then, Leader, I just refer you to the recommendations in the covering report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Carys. Deputy Leader, please.
Yes, thank you, Leader, and thank you, Carys, for running through, which is obviously a technical and a report. And I think it's sort of worth noting that local authorities or authorities across Wales or local government is restricted in what it can do. That the parameters are set in legislation. And we mentioned obviously in the previous report that we have to set a balanced budget. And you know, again in this report now that there are parameters that we have to agree to and abide by. Yeah, I'm happy to move the report. I think it offers transparency, and you know, it's a good read. I can recommend it, and yeah, happy to move the report.
Thank you for that, Deputy Lee. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Oh, thank you. And do I have a seconder for the report, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Patel. And the Deputy Leader's right to describe the report as technical. It's a very technical and complex report, but it is a crucial part of our overall medium-term financial strategy, as it is about our capital strategy and our treasury management. And I have a similar question to a question I asked earlier, Caris, just as this is a different report and has to be considered separately. Have we had any alternative proposals around the capital strategy and the treasury management strategy, or any questions from colleagues about that strategy, or any contention about aspects of either the treasury management or the capital strategy as reported today?
I haven't received any questions or queries in relation to this report, no.
Okay, thank you, Caris. And again, for the benefit of members of the public that may be listening, and indeed new members, treasury management is a very specialist area of finance, highly specialist, and we use external specialists. We commission them to assist in our decision making around treasury management, and indeed we make decisions on a daily basis around the funds that we have in place as a local authority, that we have to have in place, that every local authority in the UK has in place due to the cash flow that every local authority experiences, where they will have money in from Welsh Government, for example, and they'll have it before it is spent. So for a period, that money effectively has to be managed. But we use external specialists to assist in that decision making process, and we are very cautious in our decision making around that. That has always been the case, and can you confirm that that continues to be the case in this strategy going forward? We will always be safe and cautious in how we commit that fund.
Yes, certainly. As you say, Leader, it is quite technical treasury management, and I don't think many people realise this goes on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, we have to manage the cash flow for the authority, which includes, as you say, money coming in from Welsh Government, but also all of the money that we send out very regular, whether that's when we're paying our staff, whether that's when we're paying our precepts over to the organisations that we pay, and just paying for contracts, etc. So on a daily basis, we manage our monies. It is very highly regulated, as you said. We have external advisors who help us, and they help us and advise us in relation to our long-term borrowing and our long-term investments, which I mentioned when I introduced the report, to make sure that any decisions we make do safeguard the funding of the local authority. And you are right, we are cautious. And we take that fine line between placing our money to get a return, but making sure that we will get that money back on the due date that we are supposed to. So it is technical, but we are prudent, and we have been and we will continue to be, because at the end of the day, this is public money that we're dealing with. So we will always put security above return.
And again, I know that would be I'm sure that would be that is the approach, because again, this treasury management is frequently reported to full council. That is an approach that is shared by all members. We're very cautious. We need to make sure that funding is secure. Okay, thank you, Cara. So the recommendations have been moved and seconded. Is everyone in agreement with those recommendations, please?
Yes, Leader.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues.
Can I just say, I love the photographs used in Annex B. A lot from the Ogmore Valley.
I'm sure that will be fed back to the person that placed the photographs there, Councillor Patel. That was the last report to today's meeting. I have received no urgent items for today's agenda, and therefore I will bring this meeting to a close, and I look forward to seeing all of you again tomorrow for the next meeting of full council. Thank you.